Influences that are received from higher places are very important. 4. Each of these influences contains sublimating values, and matter, by gradually receiving these sublime values, becomes able to sympathize with the matter and influences of the higher plan which are richer in value. And one day, by shifting to the combinations at the higher level, they start to inter-influence with them in the same plan, that is, in the higher plan. What this means is that matter ascends one level up by transiting into matter combinations at the higher level, and the development continues on like this. On the other hand, if there are more influences coming from below and influences cannot be received from above to the required degree, then things reverse. That is, because the influences coming from below are relatively simple, they are not in a state to feed all motions in the relatively more complex structure of matter. If these cannot be fed from above as well, some part of these motions begins to be erased. And that matter cannot exchange any more even with other combinations in the level it exists, and becomes mixed with the matter of one level down which can only sympathize with it, and this means the regression and erasure of its values. In that case, the ascent or descent of a matter combination, more correctly, of an organism, depend on the qualities and quantities of higher and lower influences coming to it. And this depends on power of the being who manages it, to be able to fine-tune the influences to come, to invite the necessary ones into its organism and to keep clear of the unnecessary ones. That is, these acts are under its responsibility. For example, if the organizer, the being who manages that body, cannot fine-tune the billions of influences arriving at each part of an organism, and if because of this, organizers of some parts invite influences more than necessary, then excess influences start to flux into these organs, and consequently, excess activity is seen in that group in comparison to parts in other groups. These excess activities gradually require that organ to have contradictory motions against the general order of the organism. And this situation finally causes that organ to enter a rebellious state which knows no order in the organism, and which we call a cancerous organ. Therefore, the canceration event points to the need of an organ within the organism to make a much further advance in its development than it currently is. And, for excess or deficient activities in some organs in certain situations, the day comes when that organism to which these organs are subject will begin to collapse and disintegrate. If this happens in the crude internal organs of mankind, mankind talks about organic maladies or deaths. If it is seen among the particles belonging to the nervous system, they talk about psychological illnesses or cognitive disorders. All of these are the result of inability of a being to fine-tune the influences arriving at its body for certain reasons, or under the influence of sublime necessities, of which the leading ones are states pertaining to the destiny of that being, that is, states which resulting from its merit and needs. After giving this general knowledge about influences, we will talk about the influences arriving at a man. What is called man is a body constituted by a being that collects crude matter together in the earth sphere for utilizing as a vehicle, for itself, in order to serve the spirit it is connected to. The being can constitute this body only with the help and directives of the sublime beings in duty. We have said that actually the being is also composed only of very subtle particles concentrated in a point of the universe, and a complex of certain energies or influences, carrying all expressions of the needs of the spirit throughout universe. However, we would like to make it clear that the concept of point mentioned here should not be thought of as a fixed, frozen space in comparison with the concept of space in the world. This is a concept which is hard, and often impossible to understand and to explain under these physical conditions. Let us say on this topic that it should not be understood in the physical sense, but in the perceptual sense. This is such a point that wherever comprehension is posited, it is there. So, that point is both at a given space in the universe and also everywhere. Whoever thinks about this topic will start to intuit many things in this regard. This intuition will be beneficial not only for this topic but for solving many other problems as well. Knowledge of perceptual space or spherical space on the following pages will be preparing mankind in a better way for this intuition. So, the being is an ensemble of influences or energies gathered at a point that must be accepted in this sense. And these belong to a spirit. A being that is composed of such very subtle energies or influences, which cannot be measured by the superficial concepts of time and space as understood by mankind, cannot directly influence the crude spheres of the cosmoses. However, spirits also need to encounter, during their various applications, the matter of these crude spheres. 4. The being who will serve the spirit, in other words, who will be able to execute the necessities of subservience to spirit, needs to build a body for itself, out of the matter of that sphere. So, in accordance with this necessity, helper beings in duty, by going into action, assist it. The being becomes connected, through the influences coming from its spirit, to this built body and governing it, and this is called incarnation, as we have previously said. It happens like this. First of all, in the sphere where the application is to be done, a family unit duality, that is, the coming together of a man and a woman to constitute a unit, is required. After this need is fulfilled, by the assisting beings in duty, the seeds of man and woman are united to make an impregnated ovum. The being makes connection with this impregnated ovum. Here, the being, by intervening in the magnetic fields of the beings belonging to brain cells, consigns them to build the brain of the embryo, more correctly, its brain cells. The human being, while it has been in the spatium, was already keeping these hundreds of thousands of brain cell beings together and influencing their magnetic fields. In this way, brain cells beings build their bodies, that is, brain cells with the human being's influence and help. The being constructs the other parts of the nervous system via this brain which has also been constructed. After this is accomplished, it generates all other formations of the body via the nervous system. While constructing the body, materials of the mother are utilized. That is, bodily materials of the fetus which is in formation are taken out of the materials constituting the body of its mother. The being prevailing over the human body is influential and governs directly over the magnetic field synthesis, which is constituted of the magnetic fields of hundreds of thousands of beings belonging to brain cells. That is, the body is managed by the brain cells. However, this management is under the governance of the energies ensemble, which is the being of the body and belonging to a spirit, of the human being. At the initial terms of the embryo, influences are sent to the brain cells ensemble only as much as necessary. The being does not leave the perceptual point of gathering that is particular to itself, which we previously mentioned, and does not spread out into the body with its general ensemble. By always preserving its state of gathering as a complex of energies or influences in that perceptual point, it only sends the necessary quantity of some part of its influences to the magnetic field of the brain cells. It connects to it by some part of its influences. During the development of the embryo, the evolution of the fetus and finally, at the moment of man's birth, the quantity it sends and connects to the magnetic field of the brain cells increase as needed. And at the moment of birth, a significant amount of its influences become connected to it. According to worldly understanding, 7/8 of this energies complex which exists in that perceptual point become connected to the body, and only a small part of it remains freely in that perceptual point. And this is what mankind calls incarnation. As it is seen, neither does the being enter the body nor has it spread out with its whole to the organs of the body. It preserves its wholeness throughout the totality of bodily life, in the perceptual concentration point which we have explained. It sends a great part of itself out and connects to the magnetic field synthesis of the brain cells. It should be remembered that, in all of these, there again exists the assistance of sublime influences. Mankind calls the influence fields which are connected to these brain cells, unknowingly, only upon their observations, as consciousness. However, because the parts of the being which remain free and unconnected to brain cells remain unknown to them and to those around them, mankind has not been able to acquire clear knowledge about it.